Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We started this lecture yesterday in the last session. We were talking about the agriculture sector of Pakistan, and in the end, we were discussing about the agricultural finance, which is a very important issue as far as this agricultural productions are concerned, because generally the farmers are poor people, and specifically the structure we have got of this agriculture sector, where many of the people work as peasants, and they basically don't have got the ownership of land. They take land on the rent or kind of a lease. They generally don't have got enough money to finance their all expenses, which they require to in the very important seasons of sowing and cutting of their crops. Generally, they don't actually have got any availability of any particular formal source of finance available to them. They generally lack it because this uh, generally, like the people who are the poor farmers, they don't have got the collateral to offer. They don't have got any kind of credit credit standings. They don't have got any kind of links. They don't have got any kind of documents available. So generally the formal sector, which comprises banks and big financial institutions, they hesitate in giving loans to these all people. And also, like they basically also the structurally, these all people do not like to go to the banks. They generally like to take loans from their families, their relatives, the people like in their areas. And generally, like the landlords, the feudal lords, and other kind of people, waderas, sardars, and these all kind of people, generally like do not let them go to the banks as well. They want them to take loans from them. So it's a very a very important area which the government should address. First of all, they should create awareness among the people that the formal sources are better sources for getting finance for these kind of activities. And secondly, the government should make all these sources available to them, and should force the banks to not only give loans to already established industries and already rich people. They should also somehow create some opportunities or windows for these all poor farmers. So according to one estimate, the demand for smallholder agriculture finance around US around it's a missing number. I think it's just a million or billion is missing. So without access to credit, most these all smallholders are restricted to farming practices that result in low level of productivity. So there are although many new types of formal financial institutions are available now, the bank financial sector is the most the growing sector right now. But still, like, this lacks the access to these all areas where these all farmers live. Farm surveys often show that less than 1 in 10 smallholder farmer is eligible for commercial loans, which basically are which can fulfill the requirements of the financial organizations. So that is very difficult for those people to get to be eligible for the loans from these all financial institutions. They don't have got the proper documents. They generally even don't have got their CNICs or other kind of documents which are required to prove their nationality and to prove their. So this is very difficult, and also the banks basically feel risky when they go to lend to these all farmers because of the vulnerability of these all agricultural activities to the environment, to the weather. And there are so many things that can cause like, say for example, pest attacks or some kind of other kind of the problems or diseases into the crops can cause the loss of their crops. Please take care of your mics. If you don't are not talking to us, please keep them off. Don't turn on your mics if you are not talking to us, please. So the farmers are especially the women and young many people who do not have formal ownership. They also have got a lot of trouble in getting these kind of loans. So generally people borrow from non-institutional sources, informal sources, which are very which are easily available to them, but they actually, the terms and conditions they set are very difficult for them. Generally they lose a lot of money, they lose a lot of respect when they take loans from these all sources. And the survey of 1985 showed that there's declined to 68% from 90% in 1972-73. But still, there is a big number of people who are taking loans from these all informal sectors. We discussed a paper from Adnan Qadir. It's a paper about a study of informal finance markets in Pakistan. And I also showed you the table, which is not a current table, but still that shows that how much people have been depending on this informal or non-institutional sources for borrowing for their crops and for other kind of activities. So this is a very important issue that the government needs to address if it really wants to revive its agriculture sector. It's really want to give some kind of potential to these all farmers to grow and to just get a better technology and to improve their productivity and improve their per acre yield. The government has to get a lot of has to take a lot of steps for dealing with these kind of problems. Now comes the very important issue that before studying the agricultural sector performance that we need to discuss: agricultural income tax. What is your view about it, like about the agricultural income tax generally? There is so much debate about it, that whether the income that agriculture sector earns should be taxed or not. According to the federal laws and according to the tax ordinance, this tax is exempted, but I'll be explaining you some caveats of this law. But what is your view about it, and why? What do you think about the agricultural income tax? Because one of the argument of getting low tax from that is the people who are involved into the agriculture sector are not generally very rich. They don't earn a lot of money, and if you just tax them, they will get more burdened up and they will just leave the agricultural activity, and the Pakistan's agricultural need will not be fulfilled. We will have to borrow, we will have to import a lot of agricultural outputs from some other countries. So what is your view about it? Should agricultural income be taxed or not? Or if it is taxed, what can be the formula for taxation of this agricultural income that people earn from this agriculture sector? Actually, as Ali was saying, this is a kind of a concern, but as you have a progressive tax structure in Pakistan, all the salaried people Okay, so as we were discussing, Ali Ahmed was saying that we should not be taxing, but we can actually create some kind of a tax structure, like all the people who actually pay in the income tax, the other income tax, are not taxed. Like, say for example, if your income is below a certain level, you are not required to pay tax. Something similar can be devised for this particular kind of a sector, and there are some kind of rules for that as well. So generally, when this particular is communicated to the people, that that particular thing basically is communicated to the students and people, that the agricultural income is not taxed. It's not correct. Income tax is not income tax. The agricultural income tax is not does not come into the domain of the federal government. It is a subject. It is a provincial subject. All the farmers who produce these agricultural output have got exemption on the federal level, but they don't have got exemption on the provincial level. This is a different story, how the provinces tax them or how much the provinces are able to collect tax from these all people. It's a different story altogether. But the agricultural income tax is not completely exempted from the tax. Agricultural income is not completely exempted from the tax. What actually is the difference is that this is not a federal subject, it is just a provincial subject. And since the very beginning, since 1973, this is a provincial subject, and the provinces are required to collect taxes on the income that people earn on agricultural lands. So this means that if a person does not pay applicable provincial tax on agricultural income, cannot claim that income are exempted income tax return, which is required to furnish under section 114 of the income tax ordinance 2001. So 2001 basically further elaborated, and since 1973 this is basically the provincial subject. And so this agricultural income that is basically is defined according to these all provincial laws is could be interpreted narrowly to include crop farming and rental income from land. Like, there are so many people who give land on rent. There are so many people who give a land on rent, that is actually called patte pe zameen dena, they just give land on this kind of agreements. So the whatever the income they get from this rent, this is also part of the agricultural income, or more broadly to include income from livestock and animal husbandry, or basically this livestock and this animal husbandry also comes into the agriculture, and whatever income comes from them, which is also part of your agricultural income. So, but like what actually is the problem? What actually is happening? That these provinces have been like not successful in collecting good amount of tax from these all agricultural income. The reasons are many. Some are valid, some are invalid, some are actually are must which they are which in some inherent kind of a problems are there, but there are some kind of problems which actually are related to the inefficient tax collection system of the provincial tax machinery. So the agricultural income tax collection in four provinces amounted to just 1.2 billion rupees in 2009-2010, whereas the total receipts were 509 billion. Out of 509 billion, just 1.2 billion was the tax that was collected on the income that people earn on agriculture sector. The first thing that you should be clear about, that agricultural income tax is not exempted from the tax. The number one. Uh, the problem is that the agricultural income tax is not collected on the federal level, it is collected on the provincial level. But the second thing that you should know about it, that somehow because of inefficient tax collection machinery, because of inefficiencies on the part of the government employees, provincial governments, the tax collection, the amount that is collected under the agricultural income tax is very, very small. Like see, for example, in 2009, 2010, that was just 1.2 billion rupees, as in the total collection of 509 billion rupees. So you can imagine that what kind of a proportion that agricultural income tax had in the overall tax collections. So in Punjab, the revenue from agricultural income tax was 1 billion, as compared with the total provincial own tax revenue of 37 billion dollars, 37 billion rupees, and total revenue receipts of 436 billion. So you can imagine that this is a bit current statistic. So this really small amount which basically is collected on this particular kind of activity. So if you look at a brief history of this agricultural income, agricultural land output and income in Punjab, this is a paper by Naseem Ahmed, Agricultural Income Taxation Estimation of the Revenue Potential in Punjab, that was published in PDR, that is actually published by PIDE, Islamabad, the page from 321 to 335. So the Indian Income Tax Act 1922, adopted by Pakistan at independence, exempted agricultural income from taxation. So in 1973, Constitution of Pakistan made agricultural income a subject of provincial taxation. That was given responsibility to the provinces to collect taxes rather than the federal government to collect all these taxes. In 1977, this was a kind of an achievement of the government of PPP under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and he was the person basically who introduced the proper a kind of taxation system, legislation to replace the land revenue with a presumptive income tax based on produce tax units, produce index units, produce index units, like how much you produce and how much you earn from that. That should be the tax, but which was later aborted by General Zia in his period. What he did in 1980s, General Zia, he introduced Usher, and Islamic tax and output tax that levied on Muslim landowners, lessees, leaseholders, and with exemption of certain fixed, like basically non-Muslims and other kind of people, they were up to not pay the Usher. So, and under Zakat Usher Ordinance 1980, the land revenue was not payable on land on which Usher had been charged on a compulsory basis, but 1997 ordinance abolished land revenue altogether. So now basically we have got this again, the tax available. So as per the Punjab Agricultural Income Tax Act 1997, the tax payable on agricultural income shall be higher of, there are two kind of criteria which the government of Punjab sets for collection of the agricultural income tax. One is the based on the land holding, that how much land you hold, and the second is on the basis of agricultural income. So whichever is higher, that actually is something is paid by the people. But if you look at this numbers and amount, you will be amazed to see that how small this amount is. That is why generally the collection of under the agricultural income tax is very, very small. Like say, for example, if your land holding does not exceed 12 and a half acres of land, you don't pay any tax. Like the people who actually have got land less than 12 and a half acres, they are not liable for any taxation under the provincial government, Punjab government. So you are not required to pay any tax if your holding of land is under 12 and a half acres. But if you're exceeding 12.5 acres but not exceeding 25 acres, you have to pay 300 rupees per acre. And from 25 acres to 50 acres, it's just 400 rupees, and then 500, and then 600. So if you have got mature orchards, like, bigger than, if you're just producing a lot of fruit and things, basically, like, you have to pay this kind of a tax. And if you look at this taxable income, total agriculture income minus allowances and deductions, like, this is the amount that they have to pay. And this is also very, small amounts. If the income of the agricultural farmer is less than rupees 400,000 per annum, of course, he does not pay any tax. So if his income is between 400 and 800,000, so the income tax will be 1,000 rupees, and then 2,000, and like you can see, if the income exceeds from 1200,000 1.2 million, then actually he has to pay 5% of the amount exceeding rupees 1200,000 rupees. So, like, say for example, whatever is the amount exceeding 1200,000 rupees, they have to pay 5% of it. And where the total income exceeds 2.4 million to 4.8 million, so the amount is rupees 60,000 plus 10% of the amount exceeding 60,000 is a flat amount, and they have to pay 10% on the top of 2.4 million rupees, whatever they are. And where the total income exceeds the 4.8 million, so it's a 300,000 rupees, a fixed amount, and 15% of the amount exceeding this 4.8 million. So you can imagine there is a huge chance of not reporting these all amounts correctively. Like, the people don't report them correctly, and there is a very small chance that you get the fair estimates of these all things from the landowners. So agriculture's share in the total tax collection is merely 0.6% against its share of 19.6% in GDP. 0.6% agricultural income, whereas the contribution of the agriculture in the overall income is 19.2%. So you can imagine that how small contribution comes from this agriculture sector, which is a huge sector in Pakistan as far as this number of people employed in this sectors are concerned, and as far as the amount of activity actually is happening into this sectors are concerned. So every attempt to bringing direct taxation on the agricultural sector has proven to be unsuccessful, and due to, of course, partially due to the lack of political will, institutional capacity, and of course they don't have got the data available of these all farmers. And according to Akbar Zaidi's book, it's a chapter number 5, Agricultural Income Tax, Argument Against Income Tax on Agriculture. There are, no proper accounting mechanisms available. Of course, that most of the agricultural activity in Pakistan, and rather all over the world, actually takes place in the informal way. Generally, the people are not educated. The people are not generally, have got proper reporting systems. They don't have got that actually kind of a reporting system, that how much they produce, how much what output they actually produce, and how much income they earn. So it is highly difficult to collect taxes from them. And moreover, you cannot even have got these taxation offices at so many places, because the farmers are scattered all over the country. They are very, very far. Some of the farming lands are very, very far, and you cannot have established your tax collection machinery or tax collection offices everywhere in the whole country. So it's also very difficult. There is so much huge administrative cost involved in having this taxation offices all over the country, wherever these farming activities are concerned. So agricultural income varies depending on the weather and other conditions. So it's also very much unlikely that you can control these all factors, and that is also a very big concern, that farmers are not generally able to pay taxes. So already the ratio of this agricultural income to the GDP is tax to GDP, tax to GDP ratio is very small in Pakistan. If somehow this agricultural sector is catered, that is what basically when we say that you should broaden up this tax net, rather than actually creating or actually putting more burden on the already the people who are already paying the taxes. You need to bring new sectors into the tax net, like say for example agricultural sector, which is at most of the length out of this taxation structure. They are not part of this overall taxation structure. they actually are paying very small taxes just because of inefficiencies on the part of the provincial governments and their vested interests as well, because generally the people who collect taxes or the people who are responsible for collecting taxes are themselves involved in this kind of agricultural activity. So it's very difficult for them to know, because it's just a clash, like it's a conflict of interest. And this conflict of interest, unless it's dealt with or corrected, things cannot improve. So you can improve to use a progressive tax structure. Like the progressive tax structure, again, of course, there is by law there is some kind of a progressive tax structure available, but the amount is very small as compared to the tax other people pay the taxes. And it is also very difficult to make correct estimates of the incomes of the people, because a majority of the activity in these kind of sectors is done in cash or in kind of such activities which or such way that you cannot have got any record or any track of records of the transactions available for that particular kind of a sector. So, wow. Okay, so if you look at the current statistics of agriculture sector from Economic Survey 2022 to 21, if you look at the overall contribution of the agriculture sector, we have covered that in the investment and growth chapter as well, when we were talking about that how much agriculture, industry, and service sector contributed to the GDP. So the contribution that is coming from the agriculture sector is just 9.2%. So 9.2% is the contribution, which is not a bad thing in the sense, because all over the world, the agriculture does not contribute much. But since we have got so much dependence, like say for example, the next point shows that it provides employment to around 38.5% of the people. So it's a big employer, and more than 65 to 70% population depends on agricultural sector for its livelihood. It's a very, very important sector for Pakistan. Not only the main people who are involved directly into the agriculture sector are dependent on this, but also the industries which are agro-based also depend on the performance of this agriculture sector. And that basically, when this doesn't do well, the country, the majority of the people suffer. Like say for example, if there is a problem into the agriculture sector, the people who are directly getting this or involved in the farm activities, they are hurt as far as their incomes and their outputs are concerned. And similarly, the industries that actually get the output of the agriculture sector for the production of some output, like say for example the sugar industry or textile industry or some other kind of industries that basically are agro-based, they basically also suffer when there is some kind of decrease in the activity or output of the agriculture sector. Agricultural growth rate has been constrained by shrinking arable land. There are some kind of genuine problems with this agriculture sector as well. The people basically are facing a lot of trouble because this is constrained, that there is arable land is shrinking. There is a climate change coming all over the world. Recently, there was a conference which was dealing with these all kind of problems, but still they couldn't reach to any kind of a solution because of the vested interest of the industrial countries. And that basically didn't let this conference to decide anything concrete about this carbon dioxide emissions, use of this coal, and the overall temperatures in the world, they basically have not been able to reduce it to around one degree centigrade. So still it's more than 1 and 1.5 to 2 degrees. So it's just it's very difficult for the farmers in the countries like ours to deal with these kind of problems, because they are all say for example, there are so many floods, there are so many kind of problems in Bangladesh or so many places which actually are just because of this climate change that's causing a lot of trouble to the agriculture sector. And in Pakistan also, the forests are being cut. There's very small forest left. Specifically this Mangora forest. There's so many things basically are not. There are some kind of problems that basically are causing this more floods and things which are causing a lot of trouble. There are water shortages, and these water shortages are of course because we have not been able to create dams. We have not been able to whatever water we get through rains and other kind of sources, we waste them. We waste that water, and we just throw that water into the sea, which basically actually is a very not good use of the water. We cannot use the water that could be used for agriculture and other kinds of activities and to meet with the demand of the people. And that is just because that we have not been able to create dams and we have not been able to create storage capacities. Large scale population and labor force shift from rural to urban areas. As we have discussed, the Lewis model at certain point of time was so much in use. All the countries were looking to move their people from the rural sector to urban sector. So many smart people who could be good and who could enhance the productivity to the agriculture sector have moved to the industrial sectors, and somehow they are useful still, but that is something the agriculture sector has lost them to the industrial sector. These statistics are a bit old, but still, they show you that how much is the employment, which basically, agriculture sector and other kind of services sector, industrial sectors are giving. I had to improve this, but somehow that gives you the picture. It's a bit old picture, of course. So agriculture sector in 2014-15 was employing or giving employment to around 42% people. That went down to around 38% in 2008, 17, 18, and it's still around hovering around 38%. Nothing much has changed, recently. Similarly, the services sector was giving employment to around 35% people. Now it is giving employment to equal number of people in Pakistan, 38% in 2017, 2018. And industry basically is the smallest employer because only the contribution of that has increased by just 1% over the 4 or 5 years. So industrial activities are shrinking. That basically can be very much obvious from this. So if you look at the agricultural growth trends, this is reverse the opposite V. So Imran Khan's government has not been able to recently, actually things are improving a bit. I'll show you the recent statistics as well. But initially that went a lot down because of some very serious concerns and factors into this kind of agriculture sector. Now, this government of Imran Khan is trying to enhance this agricultural productivity. And what actually has been done right now is basically in this connection, Prime Minister's Agriculture Emergency Program has been initiated, which has got focus on productivity, oil seed enhancements, conserving water, enhancing command area of small and mini dams in Barani areas, water conservation, because we are wasting a lot of water, shrimp farming, cage fish culture, trout farming in northern areas of Pakistan, save and fettering of calf programs, backyard poultry programs. Like Imran Khan was so much criticized initially when he gave this program to the people, of having buffaloes and hens and these all small kind of the farming things basically at homes. But this is not a very this is not funny, because as the people have made a lot of fun of it. There are so many African countries, there are so many countries, poor countries, who have got very good success stories with these all kind of programs. So backyard poultry programs have been very successful in so many areas. Even Bill Gates has given this program. Initially, the Bill Gates introduced this program in Africa, and this has changed the fate and lifestyle and incomes of so many households in so many poor areas in Africa and so many other places. So that was I don't know, how did you take it? Did you like the idea of Imran Khan of having that backyard poultry farming? So according to Pakistan Economic Survey, we'll be talking about these statistics, but you should be knowing that we have got 2 cropping seasons. This is from your Pakistan studies books and your basic understanding about the Pakistan agriculture sector, that we have got 2 cropping seasons, Rabi and Kharif. And the Kharif is the first sowing season, which starts from April to June, and the crops are harvested in October to December. So this season crop cycles mainly consists of rice, sugarcane, cotton, maize, moong, mash, bajra, and jawar. And Rabi is another season that begins from October to December, and the crops are harvested from April to May. It comprises mainly of tobacco, rapeseed, barley, and mustard. So you can imagine we have got. So this is the important table that actually shows you the statistics. Overall agricultural growth rate, if you look at, like say for example, if you are this is still like the base is 2005 2006. Now basically the new statistics that will come, they will be using the base of 2015 and 16 that actually has been revised recently. But whatever the statistics up to this economic survey were available, they were all based on the base year of 2005 2006. So agricultural growth rate was 2.13% in 2015. That was very low in 2016 in the time of Zardari's government, 0.15. Then it increased to 2.17. I'm sorry, that was the time of Nawaz Sharif, 0.15 in 2016.
इसमें बोल दूं कि सर मैं प्रेजेंट हूं। हाँ ये कर लो। तुम्हारी पिक्चर लगी हुई है। अरे
ये सीक्रेट बातें हैं, सीक्रेटली करें भाई।
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, what's the reason behind the decrease of livestock between 2016 and 2017? Or forestry bhi usi saalon mein gira hai?
Yeah, actually, the reasons basically like livestock has not fallen by much. If you look at the livestock, like say for example, it was 3.99% and then 3.36, 2.99. There was not much fall. But if you see like, say for example, the crops basically like say for example, from 2013 to 2015 to 16, like, there was the big crops basically fell by around minus 5.27%. They were growing at 0.16% in 2015, but they fell by minus 5.27%. Generally, like the cotton is the leader into this. Generally, cotton leads in the averages. Basically, like one of the crops basically plays the most important role. And while I be showing you the individual statistics, you will actually find out that in majority of this fall, livestock has not fallen by much. That actually is also not a very big contributor, but still that the major reason and the major problem is with the crops, the main crops 1, 2, 3, the important crops, other crops, and cotton ginning, which basically have been very much fluctuating. Like say for example, from 0.16 to minus 5.27, then plus 1.22, then 4.69, then minus 4.96, then 4.54, and then 2.47. So that is what something is very much fluctuating. So these all sectors basically, these are averages. So averages are driven by, of course, one particular sector. Some of the sectors basically do well, very well, then basically these all get positive. And if one of the sector does very bad, of course, the overall averages fall. Like say, for example, the cotton crop has been responsible for majority of this growth rates to fall and rise over the years because of like the factors that I'll be showing you in a minute. Now look at this. So this is the cotton production. This is again, the data are a bit limited from 2016-17 to look at this 2020-21, and gradually this actually is falling in the period of now Imran Khan. So they were they were actually able to produce 99,061,000 bales. And then it has fallen to around 7,064 bales, in 2020-21. So it's a very the fall, why this actually has fallen. So there are some problems into this cotton sector. There were some pest attacks, there were some kind of droughts, and the seeds degradation, reduction of planting area. The biggest problem with the cotton in Pakistan is the reduction of the planting area. People are switching from cotton to other crops. And what these other crops are, I'm just going to tell you in a minute. The reasons are quite many. The farmers generally like to produce those crops which give them timely incomes, which give them higher incomes, and which have got local higher demands, or which they have got very much they can earn a lot of money on it, or which are more in the focus of the government. So Pakistan cotton farmer face a decline in seed quality that over time lost its genetic superiority, and it's very much that Pakistan has not been able to invest a lot in this seed quality, and the people are also not able to afford these all high quality genetically modified seeds. Cost of cotton growth has risen due to these all kind of a problems with this crop, the pest attacks, uncertain weather conditions, and the seeds. The biggest problem with that is the seed and the price of that seeds, because that is getting very expensive for the farmers to afford, and they are not also able to sell or produce very high quality cotton. So they are generally moving from the cotton production to some other cash crops. So the increase in cost of production of cotton has pushed more farmers to switch to other remunerable crops like corn, rice, and sugarcane. That is something you can see. Look at the sugarcane production. So what do you see in the sugarcane? See, like, say for example, majority of the production is now taking place into the sugarcane because why
Sir,
majority?
can you please specify the reason for the downfall in 2018 and 19? Like it's a sharp decline.
Yeah, like, basically when this government came of Imran Khan, there was quite a problem. Like initially when during this time of Zardari's government, the people basically, they all had got a very big, they formed this all sugar industry, like, they created these all sugar uh, manufacturing units. But when this Imran Khan's government came, there were quite uncertainties involved into this, and there was some kind of a problems with that, because initially they were trying to uh, there was some kind of inquiries going on against these all people, like say for example the mills owned, the sugar mills owned by these Zardari and other kind of Nawaz Sharif's people. And there was some other kind of the fluctuation. This is what basically is a problem in the agriculture sector of Pakistan as well, that people don't keep that a kind of a focus on certain kind of a sector all the time. They keep fluctuating, they keep changing the amount of the land which are actually particular to particular kind of sectors. So recently things basically have changed for the sugar industry a lot, and the people again are investing quite a lot of money, and they are just shifting their land to the sugarcane production for this sugar industries and something like. Look at that. So Pakistan is the world's 5th largest producer of sugarcane, the 6th largest producer of cane sugar, and 8th largest consumer of sugar. And of course this is grown around in the area of 1.2 million hectares, and provides the raw material for 90 sugar mills. So it all depends on that, how much these sugar mills are paying them and what kind of incentives are involved into the production of this sugar cane. So majority of the people, the sugar industry in the country is 2nd largest agriculture based industry after textile. In addition to sugar, this actually sugarcane is used to production of pharmaceuticals, ethanol, bagasse, and there are other problems as well. And these all time basically this was also the time when actually the pandemic was also in action. Things basically were slowing down all over the world as well. And so if you look at the rice production, this rice production has been consistent over the years, to some extent, but recently it has also grown in the time of this Imran Khan's government. So this basically, if you look at the shift from 2019 to 2020, there is some considerable improvement into the production of this rice. And the reasons, like if you look at the rice agricultural growth of rice, and you can see that how this area under the cultivation is shown by this small line, this solid line, which is basically showing. And again, you can see how the people change the area under the cultivation, which is a million of hectares. People actually change quite quickly. They actually keep changing their focus from cotton to rice to sugarcane, and there are a lot of things basically they keep doing, and that's what basically is a real problem for the Pakistan as well. And similarly, you can see here, look at this. So this is and look at this is the production, and these are the exports and the local consumption. So you can see that this is again, showing that how much rice is being produced and what kind of activities are happening there. So of course, rice is a staple food. A majority of the poor people eat rice. And even in some of the areas, they use rice flour, and they use rice for a lot of things. That is the staple food for more than half of the world's population. with around 500 million metric tons of milled rice production annually at a global level. So Pakistan has major two rice producing regions, Punjab and Sindh. And together they produce both nearly around 90% of the total rice production. And Punjab, due to its agroclimatic and soil conditions, produces all the basmati rice, whereas Sindh are not able to produce that basmati rice. We produce Eri 6. So this Eri 6 is is a low quality rice, but somehow that actually has got the demand in that has a demand in the some poor countries like African regions. So pandemic didn't affect the production of it, although it affected the Osama, please take care of your mic. So rice production increased approximately by 3% in fiscal year 2000, mainly due to the increase in area under the crop. 8% growth was there in the area under the cultivation for the rice on year basis, owing to high domestic price and availability of inputs on subsidized rates. And internationally the prices were rising, and there were inputs available at subsidized rates, so that actually attracted many people towards the production of rice. And Pakistan actually has not been able to market its products very effectively. If you look at Pakistan's main competitor is India, and if you look at that, how India actually has created its brands and how it is marketing its products all over the world, that is really amazing and very much effective as far as their international markets are concerned. So Pakistan has not been able to achieve or cater that market, which India has already taken with its very effective advertising and very effective international campaigning with the diplomatic efforts with the world as well. So now, if you look at this wheat production, this 2018-19, when Imran Khan's government came, every sector was struggling. So the wheat production also fell a lot in 2018 and 19. And again, that is very difficult to explain that, why people have been switching here and there. That basically, they go for the support prices, they go for the advantages, they look for the the local demands and international demands, and generally they shift so quickly from the one particular cropping pattern to another cropping patterns. So that is again in 2020-21 actually things basically are improving as far as the wheat production is concerned, except cotton. If you look at the if you look at the cotton, except cotton, all the crops are doing good in this 2020-21. So, but this cotton is the main driver of the growth of the agriculture sector because it's the biggest sector, and all the exports in the textile sector also depends on this cotton production. So that is what basically is although all other sectors are performing well, say for example wheat, and if you see the rice, and if you see even the sugarcane, but when you look at the cotton, this is not something that is presenting a very encouraging number. So it's a very difficult for the government of Pakistan to maintain its agricultural output over the time. And similar thing is with the maize. Maize is also another crop which people are switching to. And again, that all depends on the advantages they get in terms of the pricing, in terms of the subsidized inputs, and in terms of the local and international markets. The people keep switching, and that is gradually increasing over the years. There is a gradual growth into the maize production. There are so many people who are switching from cotton, wheat, sugarcane to this maize production.